Thank you. Well, I am here to talk to you about education, not math proficiency, not technology needs, not even biology, though I am a biologist, a reproductive biologist, which is why I'm going to talk to you about sex, sexual education to be exact. Well, sexual education has a lot of topics under it. One of them is what most of us learn in schools, which is actually anatomy and the function of the reproductive system, male and female. But actually, it also talks about fertilization, about pregnancy. But what we fail to go into is prevention of pregnancy, mainly use of condoms, of use of the pill. And possibly, we do address a little bit of the hygiene, but most of our education in Lebanon has focused on abstinence. What I want you guys to do at this point is think back at the time when you were growing up, when you wanted to learn about sex. What did you actually learn? What did you want to learn about? And where did you learn that information from? Well, I can talk about myself. When I was at school, I actually was interested in learning about sex. And most of what we got is we got this lesson at school. Of course, we got anatomy and physiology, no problem, from biology. But we also were segregated into two groups right around the time of our menarche or period. And we actually learned about mostly hygiene, what to do, how to do, and the steps you need to take as a girl. Of course, we were segregated from boys about period. We didn't even know what the boys talked about in that session. But then I was lucky enough that I had a really, really interesting biology teacher who wanted to teach us more. She came into class one day with a bowl, yes, a fish bowl, an empty fish bowl, with the saying that you can ask questions, any questions you want, anonymously, and I will answer them. Great. But the problem is, she would take a picture, a question, read the question, and then she'd say, inappropriate question. Guess what? We're talking about sex, right? Most of the questions are inappropriate. Most of what we learn about in biology is inappropriate. So where did I go to? Well, remember, this was the times when internet was just starting. I didn't get a computer until I was probably in my first year of college. And what did I get? Well, I was able to find this CD that was, if I remember right, it was a French CD, and it was called Encyclopédie de la Sexualité, basically, Encyclopedia of Sex Education. And guess what? I would sit at night, late at night, alone in front of the computer, making sure my parents were not looking over my shoulder, not even my youngest brothers and siblings, and I would learn about sex. Now, fast forward a few years. Well, this is just a nice quote I got from a book review about Encyclopedia of Sex Education in 1952, mind you, that called for a comprehensive sex education because young people do need to know more about sex. So I get to university as a teacher, and what do I see we learn in Lebanon? Well, mostly sex talk is about abstinence-only education, which is an education that is very common in the US, actually. We are not very different from any other country around the world. This mostly emphasizes societal and family values, which are really well entrenched in our Lebanese society. We do have, in our school curricula, a lot of biology introduced. Unfortunately, a few years ago, the government decided to review fortunately, I guess, they decided to review the curricula, the Lebanese curricula, biology. What did they add to it? Sexual education, including condom use, including pill use, including pregnancy prevention, and everything else you could think about. That was great, right? Not really, because the parliament and other members of the Lebanese society actually pressured the Lebanese Ministry of Education to actually remove these parts and actually make them as an addendum book to the biology book. So now the students buy the biology book without even the information in them. I mean, yes, they don't cover it, but added to it, they don't even have it. So they can't even read it if they want to. And schools are free to present it or not to their students. Big problem, right? We also have, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who've been watching LBC have seen Labib, right? لازم تعرف, because a lot of comic shows have actually picked up on that. We need more of that. We need more advocacy programs talk shows and advocacy groups that actually talk openly about sex and not actually only look at sex as a taboo, because we don't even talk about it in Lebanon. So fast forward, I get to NDU, and I'm a faculty member here. And what did I decide to do? Well, I teach biology classes. And in a lot of these classes, I see a lot of students come in not having much of the basic biology about the sexual reproductive system, let alone about sex. So what do I decide to do? I walk into class with a box full of chocolate, assorted chocolates for that matter, pencils and paper. And I make sure that the students know that they can ask any questions. No censorship will be put on these questions. I would answer all of them, mind you, scientifically, objectively, presenting the information that is relevant to the courses we discuss, because guess what? We're discussing in general education classes reproductive biology or family planning or anything else for that matter. So very relevant topics, right? Excellent. The problem is that during these sessions, I would notice that students at university had no clue about sexual health, about the use of condoms, not even about proper prevention of sexually transmitted diseases. I had a lot of questions that came up with things like, I'm pregnant, or my friend is pregnant, what can I do to prevent this? Or how can I deal with it? Another question would be, someone forced themselves on me. My doctor told me I have to have a wart removed. A wart, mind you, is a small pimple that actually grows in your vagina because they have been infected with HPV, human papillomavirus, that could be easily prevented with a vaccination. So of course, in those cases, I don't answer those questions in class because those come to me later on because they are confident that I could answer their questions. And of course, I first encourage them to talk to their parents. Second, I encourage them to actually go ahead and talk to university health services or even university psychologists. We do have a lot of problems in our society. This made me think that we need to actually take measures even earlier than this. So what did I do? I actually was presented with an opportunity during teaching one of my advanced master's reproductive classes, which was to a few school administrators and teachers brought to my attention the need the questions that their students were having. So they would ask me these questions regularly, how can we answer those students? And I would, give them the answers. And then all of a sudden I said, you know what? One of my passions has been for a while to actually develop a sexual education curriculum that could be taught to students. And they would go like, great, would you do it at our school? And I go, sure, why not? And that's what we actually did. So we administered a survey to 13 to 18-year-olds at schools. But actually, this is some of the questions that the students asked. These are 13 to 14-year-olds. Does sports activity affect a girl's virginity? Which know it doesn't. If you have a blowjob, will it actually cause you to have AIDS or HIV? Not. What is masturbation? What is the problem that it could cause me if I actually do masturbate? None. How many pills should I take for me not to turn pregnant? Now remember, these are 13 to 14-year-olds already thinking about sex, right? These have barely reached puberty. And actually, these are just a sample of questions. Many of the other questions were, how can I make my breasts go bigger? How can I make my ass grow bigger? How can I get my penis to grow, right? And so obviously the answers would have to be, the answers would have to be about reproduction, about puberty onset, but a lot of questions were also about homosexuality. So I would teach them about this sexual dimorphism, the differences between a man and a woman, but also the establishment of this sexual dimorphism, which happens in the womb even before a person is born. But nevertheless, how about 16 to 18-year-olds? What were they interested in? So 13 to 14, mostly body image, beginning to think about sex. Well, 16 to 18, now they wanted porn. They wanted pornography. What sites, what pornographic sites are okay for me to watch to get the right information about sex? None, right? So, should I have sex before marriage? It's up to you. You have to decide for yourself, right? I cannot tell you yes or no. Why is sex bad before marriage? Well, it's not, unless if you want to be abstinent, right? And other questions like that, including why is it in Lebanon that if you have sex before 18 in Lebanon, you are looked at badly, right? This is part of the Lebanese societal aspiration for virginity at marriage, right? So I would address many of these questions biologically. And of course, these questions were brought to us by teachers that were encouraged to put these boxes in the classroom so that all the questions would be put anonymously. And I would answer all those questions in a group. So that's good, right? And I would even bring questions from one session to the other, except that I wouldn't bring 16 to 18-year-old questions to 13 to 14-year-olds, because I believe this has to be age appropriate, right? Every age is interested in learning about different things, and as a result, they should learn different things. So what is the result of our survey that we actually gave them? Now, first off, you might be interested in knowing how much do students know in Lebanon? Well, mind you, I didn't analyze the data to be age appropriate because that would make the graphs too complicated. Let's just look at how much do they know on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay? And so look at this. Most of them are in the 3 to 4. They know a little bit, but mind you, there are 3 bars on there. The dark black bars are information about sex. They don't know a lot about it. I mean, 3 to 4 is okay. How about information about sexually transmitted diseases, STDs or STIs? Well, they know almost equally. How about the danger of STDs? Well, they know they are freaking very dangerous, right? But they actually, so if they know about the danger of STDs, do they actually know how to protect themselves from STDs? Let's see. Well, how much do they know about the condom versus the pill? Because another thing that is associated with unsafe sex is actually pregnancy. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. So look at this. Do they know much about condoms? Now, mind you, these are male and female data together. You would imagine that at least it'll be 50-50. Well, it's not even 30, right? It's barely 30% of people who know about the condom. How about the pill, where even less than that? And they barely know, right? That's 1. They know nothing about it. The people that do know about condoms are about, 10%? That's a problem. And we do have a problem. Now, in my opinion, we needed to know how much experience the students were having with sex, because a lot of their questions did tell me and their teachers that they actually were experimenting. So we asked them the question, have you experimented with your own body, i.e. masturbated without actually telling them that? And have you experimented with someone else? Flirting is one idea, but also having sex is another one. And guess what? Almost 50% of them chose not to answer the question. Now that's understandable, right? 5% have had sex with a partner. But actually, a lot of them have not, which is good, right? So about 40% of the school students, 13 to 18, have not yet started experimenting with sex, which is why we really need to get the information to them about what is sex, what is safe sex, and whether they want to do the choice to actually engage in sexual activity or not, or whether abstinence is the right choice for them. But in order for us to be able to do that, we actually have to present them with all the information so that they could make what we call a well-thought decision. So let's look at the last one. Let's look at how many of them have had sex and how many have not. Well, about 13% of those students have had sex, yet they don't acknowledge them having had that experience. So we are having a problem with the fact that taboo is still one of the biggest problems we have to deal with, even before we start talking about educating those students about sex. How do we compare worldwide? Well, we're really faring in a very similar manner, except that our percentages are still much lower, which is good in a way because we don't have all the problems that are associated with unsafe sex and lack of education, for that matter. We pride ourselves as the Lebanese society of being well-educated, well-informed, not when it comes to sex. So, worldwide, if you look at this graph, you could see that these are the countries that deliver some sort of sexual education curriculum. You could see that the ones that are in white, in open, which are mostly Europe, present a comprehensive approach to sexual education, meaning that they discuss anything from anatomy and physiology all the way to all the spectrum, including prevention of pregnancy, risks of pregnancy, etc. Now, the countries in light blue actually have abstinence-only approaches, and they are the ones that are actually struggling a little bit with pregnancy, teen pregnancy for that matter. And you could see that these colors signify how much pregnancy they're having, teen pregnancy. And the last darker color is those countries that have little to no sex education, similar to our Lebanon, to developing countries where there is a very high risk of actual teen pregnancy. Now, mind you, around the world, teen pregnancy has been dropping from 86 in every 1,000 to actually about 44 in every 1,000. So knowledge is power in a way, because knowledge is making those students take better choices of either preventing pregnancy, teen pregnancy, or even for not having sex. Now, where are we in Lebanon? We have 12 for every 1,000, 12 teen pregnancies for every 1,000 person in Lebanon. Now, mind you, Lebanon, we still have, and I think this is something that is dear to my heart as well, we still have early age marriage. Now, what I failed to tell you at this point is that most of the education I got about sex was not on my own. My mom did tell me and did talk to me about the changes that my body was going through. I also overheard my mom talk to one of my aunts, a much older aunt, before she got married, about what she should do before and after sex, you know, sort of hygienic sort of stuff. But guess what? Most of the people in developing countries, especially women, have only that information to hold. This is the only sexual education they get right before marriage. I think this is a bit pitiful. So, some students, keeping to the taboo, have actually asked me, how important is it to actually learn about sex, sexual education? Others were actually wondering about the difference between what I was telling them in the sessions and actually what they would learn or what they already knew. Well, two things I have to tell you. One is, it is very important to have open forums to talk openly about sex, to de-taboo sex, because at that point, and we do see that students would talk to their parents a lot more. And actually, as soon as I tell the students that the age at puberty have decreased, has dropped by a few years from when their parents got to puberty to their age, first thing I tell those students, go talk to your parents, ask them at what age they got to becoming puber, and actually at that point, maybe their parents would talk to them a lot more openly about the changes their body's going through. So that would be something positive. The second thing is, and how valid is the information they get? So we need to develop a very important critical thinking skill in our students, not only towards sexual education, but towards internet altogether. Internet is becoming a very important part of their world, children's world. And as a result, we need to teach them how to distinguish between right information from wrong information, and as a result, allow them to make good choices when it comes to where and how they use the internet. So, to finish my talk, I'm going to go back to our host and recommend, let's talk about sex. Because actually talking about sex and teaching sex will actually prevent a lot of the messes that sex could be associated with. And with that, thank you.